Hello everybody, and thank you very much for joining me for this classic film review. Today I will be talking about the 1950 film noir classic, The Asphalt Jungle. This movie is kind of a mix between a crime drama and a film noir, I would say, and it stars Sterling Hayden, Lewis Calhern, James Whitmore, Jean Hagen, Sam Jaffe, and a supporting role for Marilyn Monroe as well. And I have to say the acting is one of the strong points of this film. All the cast do an excellent job. Now, the main plot of this film is basically four men that are planning a heist to get some money. And if this sounds pretty simple as a concept, it is, but this movie is proof that a strong, solid script and good acting can do a lot. A concept doesn't always have to be complicated for a movie to be really good. And this movie is evidence of that, in my opinion. Now, Asphalt Jungle was nominated for 4 Oscars. Best Supporting Actor for Sam Jaffe, who's excellent. His character really stands out in a really stellar cast, so that's saying something. Also Best Director for John Huston, Best Screenplay, and Best Cinematography, and I would have to say that all of these nominations were well deserved. What makes Asphalt Jungle interesting, unlike a lot of other film noirs, is it's basically a character study. The plot is also important, but this film is very dialogue heavy and really focuses on all of the characters a lot, which I really appreciated. The film basically takes place in 3 acts, which I'm going to call pre-heist, which is all the setup where we get to know all the characters and we get to know the plan. The heist itself, which is an interesting scene in the middle of the film where there's very little dialogue, which contrasts the first part of the film very nicely, where we actually get to see all the action take place, and then we get basically the after effects where we see everything that happens after the heist. Another thing is there's very little music in this film, which in some ways is realistic, but the little bit of score that's there is good, and I would have liked to see a little bit more of this. Another really interesting aspect of this film is that there's no real hero character per se. The characters are all pretty complex. They're not really great or terrible. You could tell that they're into some things that aren't necessarily that great, but they're not portrayed as full villains either, yet the film still manages to be very compelling as we get the point of view of many different characters in many situations, something I really appreciated in the context of the film. The technicals are very solid, including the excellent cinematography, but in my opinion, the good script and fantastic acting are what really makes you fully invested in this film. I do have a few slight issues with this film. The first act, while written very well, might be a little too talky without the use of music. There's just a lot of dialogue, and some of it does feel a little bit like exposition. This was kind of common in films of this era, the 1950s, but I thought it could have been handled slightly better. And the last act might feel a bit contrived to some not used to the 1950s style, although I thought some of the setups were pretty interesting, and most of the end climax of the film worked well for me. So overall, I would say The Asphalt Jungle is a great classic film, and if you like film noirs from this era, you know, the early 1950s, I definitely recommend Asphalt Jungle, and I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. And I think this is a film worth watching for all fans of classic films, because like I said, even if you're not huge into noir, it is an excellent character study as well. So I highly recommend Asphalt Jungle. And as always, thank you very much for watching.